So I think the United States is not one of the key actors in Syria. Maybe that is our own error from the Obama administration when there was a reluctance to get too deeply involved in the Syrian civil war. In those years, it was on the assumption that this was a civil war that was not yet amenable to an external solution. As the tragedy has gone on, I think it is a loss of American influence in the region that the U.S. has not played a more active role. But I also think the Trump administration sees some benefit to having Russia play an act. They do not see a loss to the United States of Russia taking a more important role in international diplomacy. In general, though, I think that the Syrian crisis is, I don't think the U.S. is responsible for the Syrians having a civil war, but I think that the lack of American leadership in trying to solve the war will look historically as a lost opportunity and as a strategic mistake on the part of the United States. But Syria was never the central pillar of American policy in the Middle East. The United States has always had a much larger set of partners and interests in the Middle East. So Syria, other than on the Arab-Israeli conflict, and we tried and failed to get the older Assad president to make a deal with Israel. So the United States has very broad interests in the region. And right now, I would say our interests are mostly in the Gulf region. Egypt is somewhat less important in American formulations than it used to be. But Syria was never the center of gravity of American interests in the region. We have broader interests in the stability of the region and in helping friendly countries. In the past, it was resisting Soviet expansion. Now it would be resisting too much Iranian influence in the region. But in addition, there's also a shift in the mood of the American public as reflected in President Trump's election, which is we've been in the Middle East too long and we should reduce our presence and the cost of America's engagement in the Middle East. So we are in a period of some, drawing down of American influence in the region. Well, if you consider that half of the Syrian population is either displaced within Syria or outside its borders, it's impossible to say that, thousands of towns and villages are coping. Obviously, the country is undergoing enormous, both physical and resource and humanitarian shortages and real catastrophe. Yet we do see some pockets of resilience and capacity for Syrian communities outside the control of the government to function. Part of that is with help from the Turks and help from the international community to reestablish, schools and health systems and food supplies and water. The Turks are helping rebuild, courts and prisons for the judicial system. So there's many signs that in northern Syria, in parts of northern Syria, communities are living without much influence of the national government. And then, of course, in areas under the government's control, Damascus, by some accounts, functions relatively normally. So parts of the country our life goes on, but other parts of the country are really very tragic situations.